Welcome everyone to BC's Offbeat Bass Gear. I am BC and today we are in for a rare treat. It is a video where you don't have to look at me, but we got some interesting stuff to talk about. I was sitting down watching all the endlessly repetitive videos of where we were in 1996 with all the C and B list celebrities walking around listening to Iris by Goo Goo Dolls, a video and song I didn't like when it came out. And it made me start to think about, well, what if we were sitting in 1996 and we were looking to buy a bass, we were looking to buy a cabinet, we were looking to start gigging. And since I did that back then, I thought, well, what? Let's walk through this. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to go through the shootout that Bass Player Magazine did 30 years ago. And it is Shootout. Yes, it's 13 basses under $500. Now, right out of the gate, I'd like to tell all of you that when you adjust it for inflation, $500 in 1996 breaks down to $1,000 today. On the cover of this, we have Larry Graham, the king of thumb slap bass. He kind of invented it. We had the Warwick 7898 triple giveaway, and all kinds of fun stuff. I just really enjoyed sort of going through this. Here's the BMG Music Service ad, which is like the Columbia Record and Tape knockoff. We've got the Hartke bass heads at the time. Really nice bass heads. I recorded a couple demos with them. All kinds of fun stuff in there. The feature piece on Larry Graham, looking very cool, dressed as an admiral for some reason I don't quite get, but hey, he's Larry Graham, he's the admiral. Mesa Boogie, all bases covered, all kinds of fun stuff there. Zahn basses, the bass buyer's guide for 96-97, all kinds of fun stuff in here. It's just a fun trip down memory lane. D'Addario slow wounds. I don't think they're around anymore, actually. It was like kind of their answer to half wounds or pressure wounds. Kind of neat. A bunch of Larry Graham bass lines you could learn. And the part we're always interested in, budget basses. 13 4-strings under $500 in 1996 dollars. $1,000 today. So let's go through this. We'll talk about them and I think some interesting insights we have as we proceed. So the first chunk of basses is the Encore EB3. I'm sorry, they called it the E83. I actually played this. This is essentially an Indian-made clone of a P-bass. And it was pretty awful. I remember playing this and thinking it was just a horribly made instrument. It was going for $350 back then, which would be like $700 today. We've got the BC Rich US Series ST, which is a really weird instrument. Instead of having a split P-bass pickup, it has a single coil right across. A Fernandez Japanese-made for $450, which is a jazz bass clone. We have a Korean-made Vantage. The Fender Standard Jazz Bass, which is still made today. It's going for $480 here, which would be about $960, just under $1,000 for now in 2026 numbers. And then down here we have the last 5 of the 13 they looked at, which is an Ibanez SR300, an Aria Pro 2, essentially a PJ bass, the PV Forum, the Alvarez AEB 200, and a Samick. So let's go through these. We'll talk through it. I'll do some observations on the few I played. As I mentioned, I played the Encore. It did not play really well. It had all the issues that low-cost basses today have. Fret sprout, it did not stay in tune. The bridge was really kind of wonky. The tuning pegs were weak too, so Indian bass building has kind of stayed the same based on what I've seen in contemporary instruments. The BC Rich, this is the US series, which was made in Japan, not the NJ series, one step below. I don't remember ever seeing one of these, so I can't really comment on it. We got a Fernandez jazz bass clone, the Vantage, which apparently was a really popular entry-level bass in Europe. The standard jazz bass, which is still with us today. What's interesting about the standard jazz bass is it's not really changed much. It is still Mexican made. The price point is pretty close to what it is now. It would be just under $1,000. We got the Hohner H2, which is also a jazz bass clone. A Cort Action bass, which is basically their version of any number of PJ basses it made. And if you look down here, the Alvarez AEB 200, I think is made at the Cort factory. It was made by Alvarez, but I'm fairly certain just by, it even looks identical. We've got the Samick, which is essentially another PJ bass with a weird neck precision pickup very close to the neck. And they even moved the jazz pickup a little closer to the bridge. And we got the Peavey Forum. So what can we learn from this? If you go back 30 years ago, I think the bass selection was really pretty close to what you'd get now. The ratings, I think, are kind of in line what you'd see. The Yamaha RBX series, I believe, is still being made and still a pretty well thought of entry-level bass. Ibanez SR300. Ibanez has a lot of basses kind of coming in on the entry level. Hohner is kind of long gone at this point, I think in any real sense. An ad for the Los Angeles Music Academy here, which is probably long gone. An Aria Pro PJ bass. And the Peavey Forum with an ad from the bass player at the time from the Dave Matthews Band playing some DR lowriders. So, what do we learn from this? Well, we had the Jeff Berlin Players School of Music, sponsored by Thoroughbred Music, if you remember them. So one of the things I thought of as I thumbed through this and kind of looked at what was available back then, I think in hindsight, we all kind of color the past the way we want to think about it. What's interesting to me as I went through all of these instruments, and I even thumbed through sort of the ads in here. I think it's in here somewhere. There's a full page ad. We've got G&L, we got D'Addario. That even at this point, we have 13 quote-unquote entry-level basses. And out of all of them, the only American-made bass is this, the Peavey Forum. And I have a Peavey Forum bass, a 5-string that I still play today. The higher-end model of this that's actually quite nice. But what I think is really interesting is we have this idea that you go back far enough and, guitars and basses, they were all made in America. They were all, really well-crafted, really top-grade instruments. And in fact, that is not the case. These may have been really well-made instruments. Like I said, with the exception of the one made in India, I haven't played these. But when you were coming out of the gate 30 years ago, you were probably going to play a foreign-made instrument. This is an interesting ad. I did a video a few months ago. PBC basses. I did a video on this exact bass, actually. And I think it's actually the bass that's in this ad. They were made in Coopersburg in eastern PA. But really what's interesting here is that we will, talk about this a lot in chats and online streams, that, you go back to the 90s and the 80s, you had really affordable, well-made American instruments. No, you didn't. Even Carvin, which was a really well-respected brand at the time, and I think there's a Carvin ad in here somewhere, but I won't belabor it thumbing through here. No, even 30 years ago, we were entering the world of import basses for anything under $1,000 with, like I said, with the exception of the Peavey. And I think even with the Peavey at this point, the entry-level Peavey bass, I know this because I have several of them because I just bought a lot and I'm not that bright. Even the Peavey Foundation was off the table by 96. you had the forum, and that was pretty much it. So if you were interested in buying a budget base under $1,000 and you wanted to get something American made, you had to go with a forum or nothing, basically. Even Carvin, with their direct ship, could not produce a base for under 500, which would be 1,000 today. So this is really kind of interesting. I really thought that I'd see half a dozen American made. I thought I'd see a few PVs. I thought I would see a couple of 4-string Carvins that were shipped direct. And in fact, that's not the case. Obviously, these are retail prices, but I remember back in the day, retail prices were not as jacked as they were now. They were pretty close to what you paid. So even so, you were really stuck buying import instruments. That's not saying that they were bad or good necessarily. It was just the reality of them. And as I said, some of these are still being made. Yamaha is still doing their series. You've got some Ibanez bases, different names, different models, but still essentially the same thing. And the Fender Standard series. But by and large, even 30 years ago, we had moved past the point where you could get an American-made entry-level instrument, which I thought was kind of surprising. I really thought you were going to have, maybe a Guild Pilot bass still American-made, but apparently they were out of the picture by this point, at least at the under 500, which, once again, adjusted for inflation, is under 1,000. And I was really surprised by that. So I think that this was really an interesting exercise in looking at the reality of what things were like versus what we might think. So having said that, I hope you kind of enjoyed this. I'm going to do a part 2 focusing on bass cabinets from the same period, a slightly higher price point, but the same idea. And let me know what you think. Put comments in the chat. I want to hear what you liked, what you disliked, what you absolutely hated, what you absolutely loved, and anything like this you might want to do going forward. This is BC from BC's Offbeat Bass Gear. Have a good day.